Hi everyone, this is the video to go along with online work number 20. We are still talking about when parallel lines are cut by a transversal. However, today there is a whole lot of vocabulary you need to know that has to do with these angles. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to pause the video right now, go grab a sheet of paper and take some notes. This is a lot and often is hard for people to remember even when we're in school. So I imagine learning it through video will be even harder. So on yesterday's lesson, we learned that these angles will always be congruent because they're vertical. And we know these angles will be congruent because they're vertical. And we also know they'll be congruent to each other because they are corresponding angles. Remember yesterday I put the window around those angles and the window around these angles, and those were angles that matched up between the two windows. We also know that these angles will be congruent and these angles will be congruent. And we know that anything that's not the same color will be supplementary. They will add up to be 180 degrees. Now I'm going to number these angles, make them easier to talk about. Let's call this angle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now some of this terminology you already know. You already know about vertical angles. Vertical angles are those angles that are across from each other when two lines intersect. So like angles 1 and 4 are vertical. Angles 2 and 3 are vertical to each other. Angles 5 and 8 are vertical to each other, and so are angles 6 and 7. And you know vertical angles are always congruent. They have the same angle measure. You know about supplementary angles. You know supplementary means they add up to be 180 degrees. And you know anything that's next to each other on the straight line is supplementary. So like 1 and 2 would be supplementary. But so would 2 and 4. They lie next to each other on that transversal. They're supplementary. Or 3 and 4 are supplementary. And so are 1 and 3. Same thing down on the bottom. 5 and 6 would add up to be 180 degrees. 6 and 8 are supplementary. 7 and 8 are supplementary. And 5 and 7 are supplementary. Supplementary angles add up to be 180 degrees, and anytime they are next to each other on the straight line, they'll be supplementary. Now, yesterday we started talking about corresponding angles. And we said corresponding angles are those angles that would match up if you drew a window around the top angles and the bottom angles. So let's draw that window. I'm going to put a window here. I'm going to put a window here. Look at those two windows. Look at how angle 1 and angle 5 are in the same position in both windows. They're both in the top left. They are what we call corresponding angles. Same thing with 3 and 7. They're both in the bottom left of their windows. 2 and 6 are both in the same position in their windows. They're both in the top right. And 4 and 8 are both in the bottom right. So anytime you have angles that match up between the two windows, they're called corresponding angles. And corresponding angles will always be congruent. Next term you need to know, now let me just erase these windows real quick so it doesn't look more confusing. Put those parallel lines back there where they belong. That transversal back there. Okay, so the next terminology you need to know is alternate interior angles. Interior means inside. So we're looking at the angles inside the two parallel lines. So 3, 4, 5, 6, those are all inside the parallel lines. But that word alternate kind of means like opposite, go back and forth. Alternate interior angles would be 3 and 6 because they're on opposite sides of the transversal, on opposite parallel lines. And same thing with 4 and 5. Those are alternate interior angles because they're inside the parallel lines on alternating sides of the transversal. And you'll notice that alternate interior angles are always congruent. They have the same angle measure. Last term you need to know is called alternate exterior angles. Now, exterior means outside. So now we're looking outside the two parallel lines. So 1 and 2, 7 and 8. Those are the angles that are outside the parallel lines. But again, we've got that word alternate in there. So your alternate exterior angles would be 1 and 8 or 2 and 7 because they're outside the parallel lines but on opposite sides of the transversal, opposite lines. So 1 and 8 are alternate exterior angles and 2 and 7 are alternate exterior angles, and you'll notice alternate exterior angles are congruent. Now, I know that's a lot of vocabulary, and that's a lot for students to take in even when we're in school. So I think you should watch the video again, absorb as much as you can, take notes to refer back to, and then let me know if you need any help. Have a great day.